Welcome to The Debate. Today, we're delving into one of the most persistent and genuinely thrilling frontiers of neuroscience and consciousness, the tiny, powerful pineal gland. It's long been called the third eye, and it's really the core of this theory that it spontaneously produces the powerful psychedelic compound DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and may be the source of our most profound, unbidden, spiritual, or altered states.
It really is the ultimate neurochemical mystery, isn't it? It blends hard chemistry with this, deeply rooted human mysticism. It's an idea that has captured the imagination of everyone, from René Descartes all the way to modern psychedelic researchers.
Absolutely. And the central question we're facing today, which is deeply rooted in source material from ancient texts to contemporary biohacking, is this. When practitioners achieve these profound, non-ordinary states through, say, intense breathwork, deep meditation, or prolonged darkness, are these visionary experiences truly a result of endogenous DMT release from the pineal gland? Or are they fully explained by known, measurable physiological mechanisms that just don't require the spirit molecule to be active? I'll be arguing that the striking similarity of these naturally induced states with high-dose psychedelic trips strongly suggests the involvement of the pineal gland and that crucial release of DMT.
And I'm coming at this from a different angle. I completely agree that these altered states are undeniably powerful and real. I mean, they're effective tools for human transformation. But intellectual rigor demands that we conclude the link to psychoactive DMT releases, for now, unproven speculation. The evidence we do have points firmly toward clear, scientifically understood mechanisms, changes in blood gases, measurable hormonal shifts, specific brainwave patterns, as the primary and sufficient drivers of these experiences.
I think focusing solely on what we can immediately measure kind of misses the forest for the trees. My position rests on the sheer power of the circumstantial evidence, the consistency of the experience itself. If you look at techniques like holotropic breathwork, which was developed by Stanislav Grof precisely because he needed a non-drug method to reliably induce states that were, identical to high-dose psychedelics. The reports are not just about dizziness. Practitioners describe absolute ego dissolution, meeting benevolent entities, revisiting birth trauma, and experiencing profound unity with the cosmos. These experiences are virtually indistinguishable from a high-dose DMT journey.
They are profoundly similar in subjective effect, I'll grant you that, but similarity of effect does not prove similarity of cause.
But the intensity and the structure of these visions, it suggests a powerful endogenous compound is at play. We know for a fact the pineal gland possesses the necessary enzymes tryptamine and methyltransfer T, or IMT, to synthesize DMT. The chemical hardware is there, which keeps the theory viable even if direct human measurement during these activities is, I admit, challenging. And on top of that, rodent studies, particularly those focused on cardiac arrest, show that severe physiological stress, which includes low oxygen states, does spur DMT release in the brain. If we look to ancient wisdom, the argument gets even stronger. Take the esoteric Hatha yoga technique, Khechari Mudra, where the tongue is maneuvered to stimulate the nasopharynx right near the pineal gland. Practitioners explicitly claim this triggers the release of a spiritual nectar, often called soma, that profoundly expands consciousness. The convergence of a spiritual practice focusing on physical stimulation of that exact anatomical location to yield a visionary substance is just incredibly compelling.
That's a powerful narrative, I agree, connecting ancient wisdom to anatomy. But the sweet taste or the trance-like bliss they report in Khechari Mudra, that could easily be explained by the physical act itself, stimulating salivary glands or nerve clusters. I still maintain that science has not confirmed that the human pineal releases psychoactive levels of DMT through any of these techniques, ancient or modern. That lack of concrete, reproducible chemical evidence, it requires us to focus on the robust scientific alternatives.
So what are those alternatives when you're faced with a full-blown visionary encounter?
Well, we know these extreme breathing methods, whether it's Grof style or the Wim Hof method, cause extreme measurable physiological shifts. They immediately induce something called respiratory alkalosis, which means the blood pH rises significantly. That in turn causes vasoconstriction, or the narrowing of blood vessels. This leads to a measurable decrease in blood flow to the brain, followed by a state of hypoxia or reduced oxygen during the breath holds. These conditions are in and of themselves entirely sufficient to induce lightheadedness, tingling, powerful emotional surges, and these disassociated dreamlike states. You don't need DMT to explain those immediate physiological shifts. And independent of that, deep meditation is scientifically known to induce high-frequency gamma brainwaves, which are strong markers of these non-ordinary states of consciousness, and it enhances the pineal's primary job, making melatonin. The experiences are likely due to a cocktail of endorphins, CO2 changes, and a generalized cortical disinhibition, meaning the brain's filters are temporarily lifted. These are all robust, non-DMT explanations.
Okay, let's delve into those physiological extremes then, starting with breath work. I acknowledge that respiratory alkalosis and hypoxia cause lightheadedness. But wait, is tingling and lightheadedness really enough to explain a full-blown transpersonal experience, a spontaneous past life review, or an encounter with a mathematically structured entity? That feels like a massive explanatory leap. I'd suggest that those physiological shifts, the controlled CO2 drop and oxygen reduction, they aren't merely causes of mild symptoms. They are significant stressors that might be the trigger for a protective, defensive burst of DMT.
Protective? Why would DMT be protective?
This is where the analogy to near-death experiences is so compelling. In NDEs, the body is undergoing catastrophic cellular distress. And DMT release is often hypothesized as a kind of neurochemical last-ditch response. Breath work, which deliberately and temporarily pushes the body to its limit through hypoxia, is acting as a controlled physiological stressor. The similarity in the phenomenology of NDEs and breathwork visions, the tunnel, the light, the ego loss, it's just too strong to dismiss as mere coincidence. It suggests these tools are deliberately accessing a specific, shared pathway that DMT modulates.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that the analogy is proof of causation. We're connecting two sets of high-stress phenomena and then speculating about an unmeasured chemical link. While breathwork certainly drives brain excitation, rigorous studies have simply not proven psychoactive human DMT release. We know based on the work of researchers like Dr. Jima Borjagan that extreme physiological stress upregulates many potent neurotransmitters. So why isolate DMT when the rapid activation of the sympathetic nervous system and the subsequent massive flood of endorphins gives us a scientifically validated explanation for the euphoria, the pain relief, the tingling, and the profound emotional catharsis? Endorphins are incredibly powerful modulators. They can certainly create profound, subjective, and even hallucinatory shifts without DMT ever entering the picture.
Okay, fine. If the extreme physiological stress of breathing methods is too ambiguous, let's look at a more controlled, long-term environment, sensory deprivation. This offers a much more sophisticated biochemical staging theory. I am specifically talking about traditions like Mantak Chia's dark room enlightenment. This system posits a highly specific sequence of neurochemical events triggered by continuous extended darkness. We're not just talking about a float tank for an hour. They claim that melatonin production peaks first, then comes the synthesis of pinolenine, which is a crucial component because it acts as a natural MAO inhibitor. And only then, around days 8 to 12, does the pineal allegedly synthesize 5-MeO-DMT and DMT itself, causing a full endogenous trip.
So they claim to have a user manual for the tryptamine pathway?
Exactly. The level of specificity in that tradition suggests they weren't just guessing. It sounds like they developed a precise experiential map of this pathway. And the introduction of a mechanism to protect the DMT, the pinolenine, which as you know is an MAO inhibitor, meaning it prevents the natural enzymes from breaking down DMT before it becomes psychoactive, that makes the claim chemically sound. If DMT is released but instantly broken down, you won't trip. This ancient system addresses that exact chemical limitation.
It is a compelling argument because it demonstrates a sophisticated theoretical understanding, I'll give you that. But a sophisticated theory does not equate to scientific proof. It's confirmed that melatonin surges in extended darkness. That's the pineal gland's known function. But whether melatonin chemically converts into psychoactive DMT in humans, that remains purely hypothetical speculation stemming from researchers like J.C. Calloway decades ago. The core of my counterpoint here is that we already have a powerful non-chemical explanation for the visionary states.
And what is that?
Short-term sensory deprivation, even in a dark room or a float tank, achieves boundary dissolution, time distortion, and ego loss by quieting the brain's default mode network, or DMN. The DMN is the neural hub for all that self-referential chatter, for maintaining our sense of self. When it quiets down, the brain essentially unloads its filtering system. This suggests the brain's massive internal imagery capacity, the mechanism we use for dreaming and imagination, is the primary driver, engaged by the absence of external input, not necessarily by new chemical synthesis. The visions are simply the brain running wild because the editor has gone to sleep.
But why are those visualizations so consistent? Why the mandalas? Why the sacred geometry? Why this distinct visual vocabulary that every DMT user recognizes? If it were just the DMN quieting down and the imagination running wild, we should expect idiosyncratic, random imagery. Yet the quality of the visuals induced by some of these technologies also leans heavily toward the DMT explanation.
Okay, so now we're moving on to technological means.
Precisely. Consider the hypnagogic light machines like the Lucia NO3. These devices are specifically engineered to induce this state. Users reliably report visuals described as kaleidoscopic colors, mandalas, and, quote, ever-shifting displays of sacred geometry. This is remarkably similar to the classic visuals on LSD or DMT, as well as experiences of ego loss and profound oneness. The inventors themselves hypothesize that the light pulses penetrating the closed eyelids indirectly engage the pineal gland, which is, of course, light sensitive. Given the precise nature and consistency of the visuals produced, it seems illogical to dismiss the idea that these machines are indirectly activating the brain's internal psychedelic factory.
Well, I have to insist on reframing the mechanism purely as brainwave entrainment, which is a well-studied, measurable neurological effect. Flickering light is known to drive the brain's electrical activity, specifically in the alpha and theta ranges, forcing it into synchronous firing. This is an electrical effect. This stimulation causes the visual cortex to fire spontaneously, creating what are called phosphenes, or internally generated light patterns. It's a known, non-chemical phenomenon.
But does simple visual cortex firing explain a complex transpersonal state?
It certainly contributes significantly to the visual components. Studies on this exact technology have shown it induces changes in brain connectivity and these bursts of gamma waves. Now, gamma waves correlate with psychedelic states, yes, but this is a function of cortical activity being driven by external electrical stimulation, not a proven trigger for DMT release. It is a top-down electrical effect that mimics a chemical state. We see similar things with the so-called God helmet, which induces a sensed presence or visionary experiences by using magnetic fields to alter firing in the temporal lobes and induce gamma waves, again, independent of any proven DMT pathway. We're inducing the state through electrical and sensory modulation, not necessarily the substance.
Which brings me to my final point. The active attempt by practitioners to upregulate this chemical pathway through supplements and lifestyle. The very existence of biohacking this pathway shows a consensus belief rooted in experiential results. The idea of decalcifying the pineal gland, avoiding fluoride and heavy metals, is logically aimed at restoring the gland's optimal function, presumably to allow it to synthesize whatever it's meant to synthesize beyond just melatonin. If the body already uses the tryptamine pathway, then providing more building blocks like vitamin B6 or L-tryptophan might hypothetically yield more DMT.
Might. But the body is so highly regulated.
My strongest evidence here is the targeted, niche use of low-dose MAO inhibitor herbs like Paganum harmalaceae. This isn't just about eating more B6. This is a direct pharmacological strategy to allow any trace DMT the body is making to linger longer and become active. Now, why would practitioners introduce an MAO inhibitor unless they had experientially confirmed that the body is making something powerful that is simply being broken down too quickly? This targeted approach strongly suggests a belief in and experiential confirmation of an endogenous source that's normally suppressed.
Well, caution is absolutely necessary when discussing pharmacological approaches, even mild herbal ones. The body tightly regulates these conversions, and trying to force that system is rarely effective without extreme measures. While melatonin is the pineal gland's main product, any DMT it makes is almost certainly minimal and, non-psychoactive under normal circumstances. Furthermore, the supposed effects of these precursor supplements or dream herbs, they have to be attributed to known physiological shifts. The vivid dreams people report from high-dose melatonin or herbs like Kalea Zakateka are due to altered sleep cycles, specifically increasing REM or inducing hypnagogic imagery, that natural state of hallucination that occurs as you're falling asleep, that is profoundly different from achieving a conscious, waking, mystical experience.
So in closing, my argument really rests on the striking consistency and intensity of the experience. The fact that profoundly mystical, unitary, and visually convergent DMT-like experiences, complete with structured entity encounters and sacred geometry, can be achieved through such diverse non-drug methods, from breathing to darkness to light entrainment. It strongly supports the idea that these tools are consistently tapping into a powerful shared endogenous capacity. The pineal gland and the speculative release of psychoactive DMT remains the most compelling, unifying explanation for why the content and quality of these experiences are so profound, transformative, and visually consistent across such a broad range of human endeavor.
And my counterpoint remains focused on the proven, measurable neurological drivers. While I absolutely recognize the depth and transformative quality of the phenomenology, scientific fidelity demands we acknowledge that most of these methods achieve altered consciousness through scientifically confirmed physiological pathways. We have solid, demonstrable evidence for CO2 and O2 shifts causing cortical disinhibition, for melatonin surges altering sleep architecture, and for electrical entrainment driving structured visual activity. Until we can actually isolate and measure psychoactive levels of DMT in the human pineal gland during these practices, the link remains speculative, even if DMT may play some general, modulatory role in extraordinary states of consciousness.
We both stand at the thrilling intersection where spiritual wisdom meets scientific possibility.
The question is a fascinating one that remains open. The material clearly demonstrates that these ancient and modern tools offer safe, practical, and highly effective pathways to non-ordinary consciousness, and that, I think, is a powerful conclusion in itself.